My daughter-in-law raised her glass and told 14 relatives that the house belonged to her and my son now. She said I had signed it over in exchange for their care, and anyone questioning her was insulting the sacrifices she had made. Noah stared at his plate while she smiled beside the mortgage broker she had invited to celebrate. I said nothing. At 7:38 p.m., my lawyer pushed back her chair and rose with the real title record in her hand. Before I tell you what Rebecca revealed, comment below and tell me where you're watching from. And like and subscribe if you've ever had someone mistake your kindness for a legal right to what you built. My name was Arthur Hale. I was 72 years old, and before retirement, I had spent 38 years examining property titles for Henrico County. I still kept a magnifying glass in my desk drawer because copied signatures often revealed themselves in the smallest places. My wife used to say I could spot a missing date from across the room. Celeste thought age had made me easier to overlook. What she forgot was that I had spent my career proving who truly owned what. The trouble began in February, when Noah called me at 9:16 on a Sunday night. His contracting business had lost 2 commercial jobs in the same month. One client had delayed payment. Another had canceled after Noah ordered materials he could not return. "We need somewhere to stay," he said. "For how long?" 2 months. 3 at most. "What happened to your house?" "We're selling before the bank forces the issue." "How far behind are you?" He hesitated. 4 payments. Their mortgage was $3,180 a month. Celeste took the phone from him. "We're not asking for charity, Arthur. We'll pay expenses, cook, clean, and help with anything you need." "I don't need care." "Of course not. I only meant support." That word appeared often after they moved in. Support. It sounded kind. It covered almost everything they wanted. Noah, Celeste, and their 13-year-old daughter Madison arrived 8 days later with a moving truck, 2 cars, and enough furniture for a separate house. I had prepared the upstairs guest room and the smaller room beside it. Celeste stood in my front hall, looked up the staircase, and frowned. "Where are we supposed to put our bedroom set?" "In the guest room." "The bed won't fit. It is a queen-size room. Our bed is a California king. Then use the queen bed already there." She stared at me as if I had suggested they sleep outside. Noah touched her arm. "It's temporary," she forced a smile. "Right. Temporary." By the end of the first week, my dining room held 12 cardboard boxes. Their sectional filled half the garage. Celeste's clothes occupied the guest closet, the linen closet, and part of mine. The first small change came in the kitchen. I had always kept my coffee, tea, and medication on the shelf beside the refrigerator. One morning, everything was gone. I found my coffee in the pantry behind protein powder and flavored water. My medication sat in a plastic container above the washing machine. "Why did you move this?" I asked. Celeste was wiping the counter. The kitchen looked cluttered. "My heart medication should not be above a washing machine. It's in a sealed box. It belongs where I can reach it," she sighed. "You said you wanted us to feel at home." "I said you could stay here. That's what I mean. It was not what I meant." 2 days later, she replaced my handwritten grocery list with an app on her phone. "I'll manage shopping," she said. "I buy my own groceries." "It's inefficient for 3 adults to shop separately." She charged me $186.40 for the first week. I looked at the receipt. $42 was for skincare products. $38 was for imported cheese. $27 was for a bottle of wine. I don't use any of this. It's household shopping. "It is your shopping." She took the receipt back. "Do you want us to separate every egg?" "If you expect me to pay for it, yes." Noah entered the kitchen. "What's going on?" "Your father thinks I'm stealing groceries." I said no such thing. Celeste's eyes filled with hurt. "He asked me to help and now he's auditing me over cheese." Noah looked at me. "Dad, it's less than $200. The amount is not the issue. Then what is?" "Permission." He rubbed his forehead. "We've been here 10 days. Can we not fight over small things?" I paid for the items I used, $58.12. Celeste did not speak to me for the rest of the evening. That was how she punished boundaries, not with shouting, with cold silence that made everyone else feel responsible for restoring peace. By March, their 2-month stay had quietly become open-ended. Noah stopped looking at rental listings. Celeste began referring to the house as our place. At first, only around Madison, then around neighbors. One Saturday, I heard her speaking to a delivery man on the porch. "Yes, this is our permanent address." I opened the door. "No, it isn't." The delivery man looked between us. Celeste smiled. "My father-in-law is very exact about language. I am exact about ownership." She signed for 6 boxes and carried them inside. That afternoon, Noah followed me into the study. "Can you stop correcting her in front of people? Can she stop telling people she owns my address? She means we live here. Then she should say that." He lowered his voice. "She already feels unwelcome. She has moved half my kitchen, filled my garage, and charged me for her wine. Dad, she is not unwelcome, she is temporary." He looked toward the hallway before answering. "You don't have to keep saying that." "Yes, I do." The mail changed next. Celeste began collecting it before I reached the box. At first, she placed my envelopes on the hall table. Then some arrived already opened: a utility statement, a homeowner's insurance notice, a letter from the county tax office. "You opened this," I said. She glanced at the envelope. "I thought it was ours. My name is printed on the front. You're overreacting. You opened legal mail. It was an accident." The next week, my bank statement did not arrive. Neither did my investment summary. I called both institutions. They confirmed the mail had been sent. When I asked Celeste, she became offended. "You think I'm hiding your statements?" I asked whether you saw them. "No." Noah entered from the garage. "What happened now?" "Your father is accusing me again." I asked a question. "You never ask questions, Arthur. You build cases." She was right about one thing. I did build cases, but only after facts began repeating. I changed the bank and investment accounts to electronic delivery using a new email address. I also rented a private post office box for legal and financial mail. I did not tell Celeste. That small decision would matter later. The next layer involved money. Noah offered to pay $900 a month toward household expenses. He made one payment in March. In April, he said a client had delayed a check. In May, he said the business account was frozen during a dispute. Meanwhile, Celeste hired painters. I came home on May 11th and found 3 men covering my living room furniture with plastic. The walls were being painted a pale gray. "What is happening?" Celeste stepped down from a ladder. The yellow looked dated. "My wife chose that color. It was time for a change. You hired painters without asking me." "We're paying for it." "How much?" $3,200. "From which account?" Her expression changed. "That is none of your business." "It becomes my business when someone changes my house." Noah appeared from the dining room. "Dad, it's an improvement. I did not request it. You'll get the value back." "When?" He hesitated. "When the house eventually sells." The room became very quiet. "What sale?" He looked at Celeste. She answered too quickly. "He means someday. Years from now." I turned to Noah. "That is not what you meant." He removed his baseball cap and pressed it against his leg. "We've talked about long-term options." "With whom?" "As a family." I was not included. Celeste folded her arms. "You're 72, Arthur. It would be irresponsible not to plan. Planning is not painting over my wife's choices without permission." She looked toward the painters. "They're already here. I paid them for the work completed that morning and dismissed them." The bill was $640. Celeste cried in the bedroom. Noah told me I had humiliated her. I wrote the date in my notebook. May 11th, first mention of a future sale. The following month, they moved my desk. I had gone to lunch with a former co-worker. When I returned, the study had become a home office for Noah. My title books and county maps were boxed and stacked in the basement. His computer sat on my desk. My framed photograph of my wife Eleanor had been placed face down inside a drawer. I picked it up. Noah stood in the doorway. "I need a professional space for client calls." "So you removed my things. You barely use the room. That is not how ownership works." There it is again. What? The ownership lecture. I looked at him. It seems necessary. He became angry then, not loud, just honest. You have 6 empty rooms and act like every inch is sacred. They are not empty because you want them. I'm trying to rebuild my life. I offered you shelter. And we've been taking care of the place. You mean changing it? We cook. We clean. Celeste manages the bills. She does not manage my bills. She should. You missed the water payment last month. I did not. He pulled out his phone. Celeste showed me the late notice. I had paid the water bill on May 28th. The notice she showed him was dated May 24th. It had arrived before the payment posted. She had kept it, then used it as evidence that I was becoming careless. That was the first moment I understood the larger shape of what she was doing. The opened mail, the missing statements, the repeated comments about age, the suggestion that she should manage bills. She was not only making herself comfortable in my house, she was creating a record in which I needed her after that. I watched more closely. Celeste began attending my medical appointments without being invited. At the first one, she told the receptionist she was my caregiver. I'm not his caregiver, she said when I corrected her. I'm his family support. At the second appointment, she answered a question about my memory before I could speak. He forgets small things, she told the nurse. What things? I asked. She laughed. See? He gets defensive. The nurse looked uncomfortable. I asked Celeste to wait outside. She refused until the doctor told her directly. That evening, she told Noah I had embarrassed her again. By August, they controlled the daily rhythm of the house. Celeste chose who visited. Noah parked his truck in the garage and left my car. Outside, Madison's school friends used the backyard every weekend. Furniture I had owned for 30 years disappeared into storage when I asked. Where the storage unit was, Celeste said, safe. What is the address? I don't have it memorized. Whose name is on the contract? Noah's. I looked at my son. He stared at the floor. Then came the family dinner on September 9th. Celeste invited 6 relatives without asking me. During dessert, my sister mentioned how generous I had been to open my home. Celeste smiled. We don't really see it that way. My sister looked at her. How do you see it? We've taken over the taxes, maintenance, and care. At some point, a house becomes yours because you're the one keeping it alive. I placed my fork down. You have paid no property tax. She smiled without warmth. Not directly. What does that mean? It means money isn't the only form of ownership. Noah said nothing. That silence told me more than an argument would have. At 10:08 the next morning, I went to my private post office box. Inside was a thick envelope from the Richmond Department of Finance. The notice concerned a change in the property tax mailing record. It was addressed to Celeste Hale, property owner. Stood beneath the fluorescent light and read the name twice. Then I looked at the parcel number. It belonged to my house. I did not go home. I drove straight to the Richmond Circuit Court clerk's office, where land records were kept. For 38 years, I had taught younger examiners never to rely on a tax notice, a family story, or even a copy of a deed when the official record was available. At 10:42 a.m., I entered my address into the public terminal. The screen showed 2 documents. The first was the deed I had signed with Eleanor in 1986. The second had been recorded 12 days. Earlier grantor, Arthur Hale. Grantees, Noah Hale and Celeste Hale, husband and wife. Consideration, $10 and family care. My name appeared at the bottom. The signature looked almost right from a distance. The capital A leaned forward. The H in Hale had the same tall first stroke I had used for decades, but copied signatures often copied the shape and missed the movement. My real signature began with a firm downstroke. This one had a faint stop near the top of the A, as if someone had traced it slowly. The notary block was dated August 28th. At 2:15 that afternoon, according to the deed, I had appeared before a mobile notary named Denise Carver and signed away my house. I knew exactly where I had been. At St. Mary's Hospital, sitting beside my sister after her cataract. Procedure. I still had the parking receipt in my glove compartment. I printed the deed and asked the clerk, whether anything else had been filed. Under the property, no new lien yet, she said. But there's a title company inquiry attached to the parcel. Which company? Commonwealth Settlement Services. That meant someone was preparing another transaction. A sale was possible. Refinance was more likely. Celeste had changed the tax mailing record because she needed notices to reach her before they reached me at 11:18. I called Commonwealth Settlement Services. A title processor placed me on hold, then transferred me to compliance. The compliance officer was named Raymond Brooks. He asked me to email identification and the original deed. 5 minutes later, he confirmed the file. Noah and Celeste had applied for a cash-out refinance of $185,000. The closing date was November 14th. The lender was Blue Ridge Home Finance. The application stated that they had received the property from me in exchange for providing full-time care. It also stated that I had moved permanently into assisted living, was sitting in my own car outside the courthouse. What address did they give for me? I asked. It belonged to a senior living center in Midlothian. I had toured that center once with Celeste in July. She claimed she was researching options for an older client of Noah's. Now I understood why she had asked me to stand beside the entrance while she took a photograph. What supports the claim that I transferred the property voluntarily? I asked. The recorded deed, a gift letter, and an occupancy statement. Whose signature is on the gift letter? Yours. I signed no gift letter. Raymond stopped speaking. Then he said, I am placing the file on immediate hold. Preserve everything. Applications, emails, device records, identification documents, and every communication from Noah and Celeste. I'll notify legal and the lender. At 11:56, Blue Ridge Home Finance called me. A fraud specialist named Angela Price confirmed that $143,000 of the proposed proceeds had been assigned to pay creditors at closing. Noah's business lender, 608403. Credit cards, 411760A. Personal loan in Celeste's name, $18,250, past due. Taxes and fees, $14,590. The remaining cash would have gone into their joint account. Did the appraisal happen? I asked. Yesterday morning. I remembered the white vehicle outside when I returned from my walk. Celeste had called it a decorator's car. It belonged to an appraiser. The house had been valued at $412,000. My home was paid off. They planned to place $185,000 of debt against it, clear their obligations, and leave themselves with cash. If the payments failed, the lender would come after the house. Angela asked whether I wanted the application canceled. I want it frozen and preserved as evidence. She gave me a case number. Then I called Denise Carver, the mobile notary. When I gave her the recording number, she remembered the appointment. A woman named Celeste arranged it, she said. She said her father-in-law had mobility problems. Did you meet me? I met an older gentleman. Did you examine his identification? There was a pause. She showed me a photocopy. She said he had misplaced the original. Describe the man. He wore a gray cap and glasses. He kept his head down. Noah owned a gray cap. He also knew how I signed my name. My son had either sat at the table pretending to be me or found someone willing to do it. I asked Denise to preserve her journal, payment record, text messages, and any photograph from the notarization. Her voice became frightened. Am I in trouble? That depends on what your records show. I ended the call at 12:31. For several minutes, I sat without moving. The pain was there, but it was no longer useful. Celeste had opened my mail, moved my belongings, and described me as dependent. Noah had helped turn that story into a recorded deed. I looked at the false signature. Again, cold clarity replaced every remaining excuse. This was not a misunderstanding about future inheritance. It was a coordinated attempt to take legal title, borrow against my home, and make my objection look like confusion. At 12:38, I called Rebecca Sloan. I need you to stop a fraudulent deed and a $185,000 refinance, I said. How soon is closing? November 14th. Come directly to my office, she said. Do not go home first. I placed the papers in a folder and started the car. By then, I was no longer wondering whether my family had crossed a line. I was deciding how permanently to close every door they had. Opened Rebecca Sloan's office, occupied the 6th floor of a brick building near the James River. I arrived at 1:07 p.m. She was all ready. waiting in the conference room when her assistant brought me in. Rebecca had handled complicated property disputes for almost 30 years. She was 61, silver-haired, and so controlled that nervous people often mistook her silence for approval. I placed the tax notice, recorded deed, lender case number, and my notes on the table. She began with one question. Did you sign any document transferring the house to Noah or Celeste? No. Did you authorize anyone to sign for you? No. Did you appear before Denise Carver on August 28th? No. I was at St. Mary's Hospital with my sister. Can you prove that? I have a parking receipt. The hospital may also have visitor records and security footage. Rebecca pulled the false deed closer. Did Noah or Celeste have access to samples of your signature? They moved my title books and personal files into the basement. Driver's license? My original is in my wallet. A photocopy was inside my tax folder. Social security number? Both of them knew it. She studied the signature with a magnifying lens from her desk. You were right to come directly here. What happens first? First, we stop the refinance. Second, we warn the public record that ownership is disputed. Third, we file an action to set aside the deed. Fourth, we remove them from your home through a lawful process. In that order, some of it will happen at the same time. She drew a line down the center of a yellow legal pad. On the left, she wrote the title and loan. On the right, she wrote, House and Personal Safety. Fraudulent deeds create two separate problems, she said. One is legal title. The other is practical control. Even if the deed is invalid, Noah and Celeste are living in the property and behaving as owners. We address both. At 1:22, Rebecca called Blue Ridge Home Finance. Angela Price joined the call with the lender's legal officer. Rebecca identified herself, then had me state directly that I had not signed the deed, gift letter,